Welcome, Ron.
Thank you.
So, Ron is going to be one of our 53 authors that is going to be at the Festival of Books and Creativity at the end of June in Novi, Michigan. And today we're going to talk about fantasy books. Tell us about the books that you are going to be bringing to the festival.
Well, I'm going to be bringing my trilogy. It's the Fate of Vaeldor trilogy. It's medieval fantasy. And then I'll also have a fourth book with it, which I'll get to that. But the trilogy is basically it's generational. From book one to book three is 50 years of time. It's got humans and elves and dwarves and all the magic and monsters you expect from medieval fantasy stories. And the humans, who of course never live as long as the elves and dwarves, they have children who then become characters in book two, and then grandchildren that become characters in book three. So it really is a generational type story that it's an ancient evil that awakens. The question it poses is, can evil ever truly be destroyed? And it is a hard fought battle right from the beginning until the end. Um, and that's the gist of the trilogy there. Of course, there's a lot more I could say about the characters. And then in every good medieval fantasy adventure, there's always those mysterious heroes.
Hmm.
Uh, you can look at, of course, my all-time favorite, Lord of the Rings, and there's
Hmm.
guys like Gandalf and Aragorn, and forget the movies, just the book parts, where you don't know what these guys are doing when they disappear or anything. So
Hmm.
book four really is then a retelling of the entire trilogy, and I call it my peek behind the curtain book. So it takes
Oh,
two of those mysterious characters and it lets you know everything that they were doing through the entire trilogy when they weren't in the current story. So it's a
oh,
nice little story there where you get to then see what these heroes are made of. They weren't just missing during these tough parts of the books when everything was going wrong. They were busy, and you get a little show of what exactly they were doing. So that's book four. Halfway through book five now, and what that
oh,
is, it'll just be continuing adventures in the same world that I created. So there you have it
awesome.
in a nutshell.
Do you have those book covers to share with us?
I do. So I have the first one here is Alas, the One That Evil Brings.
Ah,
Uh, the second one then is Might and Strength of Evil Bone.
mm-hmm, mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
This one, a award-winning cover,
Gee, I
Eyes
wonder
Open
when
in
that
Shadowy
happened.
Hall. And then the fourth book is House of Elgaroth.
Ah,
Yeah, that's a skeletal dragon with what's called a Death Lord riding it, and there's one of the heroes down at the bottom of the screen. So, yep, those are my current book covers.
mm-hmm. So, book five,
Mhm.
do you have a, do you design your covers before, during, or after the story?
I do it after.
Okay.
Sometimes I even title them after, but book five's title is a gimme. The first three books were they were had different working titles. Like the very first book was called Wind of the Dead because in the beginning it all starts when a icy cold wind blows across the land and in the middle of summer, and after it
Oh,
passes over, all the dead start to rise.
ooh.
So it had a working title of Wind of the Dead, but then as I progressed, I decided to name each of the books of the trilogy after a line of the prophecy. So there's a prophecy that you learn in
Ah,
book one, which will take you through the first three books. And so then, yeah, I grabbed a line from the prophecy for each one that pertained to that particular book, which is why you get a title like Might and Strength of Evil Bone. Yeah, on its own, doesn't really make a whole lot of sense, but when you know the prophecy, I know where we're at now, kind of thing. So
so it is a series that you need to read in progression.
Yeah, the trilogy definitely. And book four, you pretty much will get lost in book four if you haven't read the trilogy. Because one thing book four is not going to do is retell everything that the trilogy told you. It's going to give you all the new stuff, the new adventures, the new encounters. Um, and, but then book five, you could read book five without reading the other four. Uh,
Mhm.
but you'll like book five a lot more if you've read the trilogy because it's taking characters that have already been in the books and it's
Mhm.
continuing adventures for them. So in book five is called Lorniber, and that is about one of the dwarf characters who has, through the course of the trilogy, they've rediscovered some ancient dwarfish mines, and he has vowed to go back and reclaim these mines in the name of his race. So in book five, it's going to be him with some of his companions that he gathered during the trilogy. He's going to
Mm.
invite them to join him in a mission into the mines. And so that book is all about that story. So don't necessarily need to read the other four to enjoy it, but I think you'd enjoy it better. You'd be more in tune with the characters, I think.
So when do you think book 5 will be out?
Well, I have released a book a year for the last 4 years, and I was really hoping to do book five this year. It's still possible, but it's I'm not real optimistic from the point that I'm in right now compared to where I was in the other books at this time. And of course, my regular income is in the way, so so it's kind of on hiatus at the moment. But I'll get back to it as soon as I can.
So, speaking of your regular job,
Yeah.
what is your regular job that is in the way of you writing?
Well, you see, I've got a bachelor's degree in engineering, so naturally I'm a tax accountant. I do
I
taxes
love
for a
it.
living, which, really, and in some ways is the greatest job in the world because it gives me a lot of time to write the rest of the year,
Mm.
which is how I've been able to get books out, as quickly as I have. Now, the first couple books did not write those in a year each. I didn't start releasing the trilogy until it was complete, and the first two books took about 15 years due to growing
Yeah.
and reworking and changing point of views and all the things that go with it when you just start out. And then once I got those done, I got into my groove, and now I feel like I know what I'm doing for the most part. Uh, Anybody truly know what they're doing? Well, but well enough.
So, do you work with an outline or do you pants these and just write?
So I do a basic outline, but when I make an outline, it's going to be an outline of the beginning, it's going to have the end, and a few key things that I want included in the story.
Okay.
And then from that point, I have my characters. I know my characters very well,
Mhm.
and I let them then live the adventure. And then a lot of things happen because of these living persons in my head. They take directions that I did not expect them to take, and not a lot of people understand that. Sometimes my wife doesn't understand why I say something like that, but they do take on lives of their own, and
Mhm.
suddenly something that you plan to happen just doesn't make sense anymore because no, that character wouldn't do that. And sometimes your characters can alter your story for you. I mean, book three, which of all the four books I have right now, nothing against all of them, but book three is my favorite. I
Mhm.
really love that book. And it's got a character in it who wasn't supposed to survive, but he just ended up surviving. And, I even remember when he was supposed to get killed, but it just never happened. And
Hmm.
that's where the story kind of takes over.
Mhm.
So basically, I lay the train track, but it's got all these different directions that it could go, and my characters keep pulling those levers to switch tracks, and but eventually I end up back where I need to be by the end. So the story grows as it unfolds.
So, with your characters, you have all of 5 of your books contain basically the same family or at least characters. So, do you have like a master document or master file
Mm.
of all of your characters?
I do, and I even put in the back of each one a name glossary.
Okay.
So because books like this have so many characters that come and go,
Mhm.
um, I always found it very helpful when I read books that had it, and I knew I was going to do the same. So it's got a phonetic pronunciation for each character
Ooh,
and the different
nice.
places that you might get to in the books. And it gives you just a little reminder of who they are so that when you meet some obscure character that you heard that name before and you can't remember exactly who that is, you can
Mhm.
flip to the back real quick. It's in alphabetical order, look it up, gives you a little reminder who that person is, because there
No.
are a lot of characters, especially in a 50-year
Yeah.
trilogy.
So when you say that you really know your characters, does each character have its own character profile that you've written out, or how do you keep
That's
all of
where
that?
so that's where I really rely on my brain, but luckily I was blessed with a really good memory. So
Ah.
I retain things really well. I know my characters inside and out, so I
Mhm.
don't really have a list of any of their personality traits or anything like that. I mean,
Mhm.
I could tell you the color of their eyes, I could tell you the color of their hair, and we're talking a lot of characters.
Yeah.
Um, because it's I don't know. I guess if you want to say there is kind of a master list because it's the glossary in the back of each one of the books.
Mhm.
So and the glossaries aren't all the same because in some books some characters are gone and some new ones come in.
Mhm.
So fresh blood, and yeah. So I guess in a way there is a master list, and because I've compiled it, it's like people who study for tests. If you've written it, you kind of know it better than just trying to remember it.
This is true. Awesome. So, what got you started writing this
Oh,
whole trilogy? What inspired that?
all right. So, way back in 1979, my
Okay,
dad
just a couple years
introduced,
ago.
just a couple of years ago, my dad introduced me and my brothers and sisters to Dungeons and Dragons. So, at that
Ah.
point, I start to get the bug for medieval fantasy.
Mhm.
My older brother Dave then tells me, and he's 5 years older than me. He's telling me how great Lord of the Rings is, and I was young enough that I tried to read it. It's like, so I couldn't quite get it. So then I went to a different book. It's called Ursharok by Jerry Nichols, Greg Hildebrandt,
Mhm.
and it's a great starter medieval fantasy book for a young reader.
Mhm.
And that one kind of inspired me to read more. And then I moved on to it was the Chronicles of Purdain by Lloyd Alexander.
Mhm.
Um, nice little series again, young adult, and that was a lot of fun. And then when I was 14, so this is 5 years later, um, my dad wrote a little short story.
Mm.
And I was so impressed by this short story. Something like, I didn't realize that people could write stuff. It just all comes in books at that age. But no, he wrote this, and this
Disappears.
is really cool. So I decided I want to write a story. So by 15, I started writing on my own, and now I've now read Lord of the Rings and loved it. And I've probably read it another 19 times since then in the Cimmerillion as well. Just love that stuff. I love the world, the creation, everything. And so at 15, I started writing my own story by
Mhm.
pencil on lined paper.
Ooh.
And it was over 300 pages that I wrote. And
Oh,
that was
wow.
when I discovered I can't write a short story. I've tried, and I do have a couple that I'm just like, they're okay. Other people like them, but it is. I like the long story, the involved
Mhm.
story. And so at 15, I wrote that and then put it aside. It's been read by a couple siblings. That's about it.
Mhm.
And then I wrote another story when I was in college in my I think I was 20 years old, and had to write a speech. And it could be about anything. Well, about anything. All
Ooh.
right, I'll write something medieval fantasy. So I
Mhm.
wrote a nice little story, It ended up being about 20 pages long. I got to read about half of it before I was told your time was up 5 minutes ago. And so I never got to finish it. But lo and behold, some of the students wanted to hear the rest afterward.
Oh,
And
nice.
so that was nice. And that then, 2 years later, after I graduated, blew up into an entire book. But I still didn't decide to write. Then I got the idea for the the antagonist in the story that is in the trilogy,
Mhm.
and I didn't write about it right away. I just started creating a world, and when I created that world, I started with the land of the book I wrote when I was 15, and then I added
Mm.
stuff from the book that I wrote when I was in my early 20s. And then by the time I was in my 30s is when I finally sat down and started writing the trilogy. And it was supposed to be two books, but the
Mm.
first book, as it stretched beyond 1,000 pages, I decided, okay, I need to split this one in two, and so it became a trilogy instead of a two-book series. And that's another part of just the story growing. It's like, wow,
Mhm.
my outline here it has like 26 chapters. I'm on chapter 52. So yeah, so it became a trilogy, and then I went with omniscient point of view the first time, and then I was like,
Mhm.
no, I don't like omniscient, so I switched to third person because then I felt like getting in the head of specific characters now instead of just being all knowing, learning
Mhm.
from them and what they know of things instead of just knowing everything, and so then the whole rewrite from the first two books were done. Now they're being completely converted into third person, and it grew
And it
again
grew.
because the characters grew a little more and
Mhm.
some things changed. And so,
Oh.
luckily, I hadn't started book three yet. So, I finally get the first two books done, and I get them to the point where I'm ready to publish them. And then I was like, but I want to get the trilogy done. So, I got to do book three now. It's like, okay, here we go. Then COVID hits, and
Oh.
I write the book in 3 months.
Oh, wow.
And
Well,
go figure,
that
it's my
counts.
favorite of the three books. I love the other ones. The other ones are great, but I really like. There's just something about the third book that really captures me, and it was the fastest book I ever wrote. But it was just everything is there in my head, and
Mhm.
it just needed to get done. And when you can't go anywhere or see anybody or do anything,
Yeah,
well,
that
you got
helps.
a lot of time to write, and book three was born. And then the trilogy, I released it one book a year after that. And then I started writing book four and got that done as well. So, so that's kind of, and all the time, I just kept reading, went through the Dragonlance series, read some of the
Mm.
Shannara series, The Wheel of Time by Robert Jordan. I really liked that series. Excellent world builder, that guy. He's deceased now, but and his final book was finished by Sanderson,
Mhm.
who had a similar style of writing, so it worked out pretty well for the 14 book series there that I read, but a good series.
So how many books do you think you're gonna end up writing with this world? Because 'Cause you've got the trilogy,
Yes.
but yet you still have books 4 and 5, which are really part of the same world. So how many
Yes.
books
So after book five, I will
Mhm.
then be publishing the other two books that I wrote a long time ago. They need
Ah,
some complete rewrite because they started the creation of the whole world that the trilogy is in, so they're already a part of it. And now they will then join these. So I'll have a total of 7 books that are planned right now within the world,
okay.
and I do plan to continue writing adventures within that world as time goes on. So
Mhm.
I don't know if you ever read Piers Anthony, the Zant series, but he always had time going on, so you kept meeting offspring of some of the other characters and whatnot, and it'll be kind of like that as far as the passage of time goes.
Mhm.
Um, yeah, I plan on just continuing to do it while it's fun. And right now, I just can't see it not being fun. Well, while it's fun and while I'm still able to type.
Yeah.
Arthritis.
Well, then you get speak to text option.
That I have been looking at. I've been looking into it. I said I would start looking into it after the trilogy. I've had a lot of requests for it. It is another burn to take on. I've talked to people at shows about it. The best person I ever talked to was the very first show I did with you.
Oh,
You sat me next to somebody that knew a lot of stuff. I just wish I remembered her name. But
I can get you that name not off the top of my head because I don't have the layouts memorized, but I do have the layouts in a
Gotcha. She had a
program.
lot of books. And but yeah, she did the audio books, but she has like multiple readers doing her
Mhm.
books because I think they're romance novels. And she said it's kind of better to have men do the men and women do the women and
Yeah,
whatnot.
I can see
Um,
that.
but you know, so I've kind of started looking into it. I've got people telling me that I should do the reading for it, and I was like, "Well, I don't even know where to start. What do I buy a tape recorder?" I'm not. I'm not really into technology. People think I am because of what I do for a living, and I'm on my computer all the time. But I run programs. I know those programs. Last night I was up to midnight with my wife helping me just set this up so that I knew how to work the camera. Sorry, honey. She's the best. And she had to get up early to go work this morning. But yeah, so I'm real slow when I try to change my ways and move along with
Mhm.
technology. And so I do need some more gentle pushes to keep myself going in the direction of audiobooks.
Mhm.
Um, you know, could I be the reader for it? I guess I could. I mean, I don't know if anybody really wants to be the reader for their own books, but one thing for sure, I would know the feeling of the way people are talking, and
Yeah,
you
that
know,
is
better
the
than anybody else. So um, it's on the table right now, and hopefully I pursue it a little more once I things settle down for me a little bit after tax season.
So, what program are you writing in? Do you just use Word or do you
I use
use
Word.
Okay.
I do use Word, and I also use oh, what's it called? I use it so much I don't even look at the name of it anymore. But writing pro or something like that.
Oh,
It's an
yeah.
editing software,
Yep.
um, and I found that to be very helpful. I also have used what is it, Rocket Publishing.
Okay.
They give you some help as far as doing things on Amazon and getting through those obstacles and whatnot. So those are my sources there, and then of course some fellow writers.
Just go attend an event.
So yeah, that's a funny thing is and again, it's just me being stuck in my ways. You know, I'm like
Mhm.
an old dog. uh, and yeah, I don't do a whole lot of sharing, and I know I should do more sharing. And you know, the thing that really helps me is when I have people that share with me, and then that kind of inspires me. But I never seem to be the one that ever spearheads anything like that. I don't jump into groups. I got to be dragged into groups, and then once I'm in the group, you got to drag me out. So you know, it's and you know, and one writing person that you know very well, you know, she does a lot of pushing me, so,
Ah,
so I can,
yes. The
you
the
know,
one that can't make it in June
yeah,
because
unfortunately,
some silly thing called an anniversary.
stupid anniversaries.
I know.
Why do people get married in the summer? I mean, I got married in the winter or in October. You know, we had a
Oh.
costume themed reception, so it was kind of fun.
Ooh. Well,
But
this
yeah,
has been
I really need to get into groups more often. And I know it, but I always feel like, well, I can take that time and instead be writing.
this
So
is
you know, so I don't
true.
do them as often as I should. And one of my New
Mhm.
Year's resolutions is to get out there more.
Well, that's awesome, and I can't wait to see you again at the end of June in hopefully warmer Michigan.
Should be.
Yeah, yeah. Can you have some warm weather for us?
I will do my best.
Well, thank you for taking the time to come on here.
Mhm. Thank you.